Welcome to the theater. Take a seat, grab some popcorn, and get ready for another horror movie double bill. This is Friday Night Fratricide.
Good evening. Come on in and settle down. Settle down, Ewan. I know how you like to get a bit rambunctious on these Friday nights.
I do love to get rambunctious. I'm a bit of a scamp.
You are a bit of a scamp. Welcome back to Friday Night Fratricide. We have another spooky double bill for you this week. We are your hosts, the Happy Brothers. I am Fraser.
And I am Ewan.
And what did we pick again for this week?
It's evolutionary horror.
That's right, evolutionary horror. What a pretentious and niche genre
It's a very small scope.
It is incredibly. It's kind of on the same time though. It does open it up to interpretation, I guess.
Yeah.
Because when I think of evolution, I think of the very cut and dry, like the evolution of man. Whereas the film you picked this week, The Fly, is more like the future of evolution. It's like the going beyond.
Yeah. Humanity's changing in ways that we don't particularly like.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, spooky. Yeah. So it's one that's kind of open, and I think it's there are quite a few films that you could probably pick from. If you're looking at it from that angle, if you're looking at it the cut and dry, like the evolution of man, there's probably far fewer. I struggled to find one really other than Altered States, which is the one I picked this week.
Yeah. I was very tempted to pick Evolution with David Duchovny.
It's not a horror film.
It's not. I remember we had a double bill DVD of Evolution and Ghostbusters. I think it's sort of along the same lines of that kind of bordering on horror, but it's definitely very sort of family friendly, goofy.
Yeah. The ideas
sci-fi.
behind it could easily have been a horror. But
it's got monsters and stuff in it, but it's not really very scary.
Yeah. It is a good film though.
It is a good
Would
film.
recommend it. Yeah. Do enjoy it. So which film would you like to kick off with this week?
Well, I watched The Fly first.
So did I.
Should we go with The Fly first?
It's always good when we pick the same film to start with.
Yeah, good.
It's one that you've not seen before.
I had not seen The Fly before, which is mind-blowing because this is like one of the big horror films.
Yeah.
Or one of the big horror films of the 80s, I guess.
I would say of all time.
Or maybe of all time. It's one of the easily most recognizable. I mean, it got parodied in the Treehouse of Horror pretty quickly, so it must be pretty iconic and influential and all that.
It was funny. I was speaking to our dad yesterday, and I was saying what films we're doing this week, and said The Fly. I was like, I've actually never seen The Fly. And I'm like, what? How have you guys not seen The Fly?
Both of us never seen The Fly.
Like that was just bizarre to me.
Yeah. I bought it on Blu-ray a while ago, and I've had it sitting on my shelf waiting for like the right reason to watch it.
Yeah.
And
Here we go.
This has been the right reason.
What better reason could we have than the podcast?
Yeah.
That we both created.
Yeah.
For this very purpose.
We made all this up. Like we're just,
Yeah.
It's not like anyone put a gun to our heads and said, "Hey, go and watch horror films."
I know.
Like
yeah.
we're doing it.
But then it would become a
purely by
task.
choice.
We wouldn't want to do it.
That's true.
That's true. We're doing this because we enjoy it.
Yeah, we love doing it. Anyway, so The Fly, 1988, directed by David Cronenberg, famously
The man himself.
The big man. I love a Cronenberg.
Big man, Big Davy.
Big Davy Cronenberg. I love a Cronenberg.
Yeah.
There's been some good ones. The Videodrome is great. The Dead Zone.
You seen Videodrome before you seen The Fly?
Yeah.
That's wild to me.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I really liked Videodrome. So it's a remake of a film from the 1950s that had Vincent Price in it as the main character. It's now got Jeff Goldblum as the main character, as Seth Brundle, who's a scientist of some description, a physicist or engineer or whatever, who has invented teleportation. He has invented a device that can transport matter from one place to the other, and he's trying to figure out how to transport living beings, because just now it can only do inanimate objects. And the film starts with him meeting the other main character, played by Gina Davis. Is it Veronica, her name is?
Yeah.
She's like a journalist for a science magazine. And he convinces her, like, stay with me, you write a book on what I'm doing, document all what I'm doing to get this working, and then it'll make you like the most famous journalist. Like, you'll be along for the ride on the biggest scientific discovery of all time. And she's like, yeah, cool. And then they also immediately fall in love and start sleeping together.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest, you would do if it was Gina Davis and or Jeff Goldblum. They're
true.
both very attractive people.
Also, just quickly to tie back to one of our previous episodes, remember Gina Davis? Remember who she was married to?
Who was Gina Davis married to again?
What's his name? Rennie Harlan, who directed Deep Blue Sea.
Oh, there you go.
All connected.
Oh, interconnected, yeah. All these horror films.
Yeah.
They all tie together. So, yeah, it pretty quickly goes from there into the body horror territory when they start doing the experiments of trying to transport living beings. There's a scene when he teleports a baboon.
Poor baboon.
It's very gross. It comes out the other side, inside out. It's pretty disgusting.
It's pretty horrible, yeah.
And then there's a whole thing where he starts talking about, it gets really into the Cronenberg dialogue. He starts talking about the flesh, and they always refer to it as they don't talk about, like, flesh or biology or human beings. It's always the flesh. It's like the machines can't transport the flesh. And it's, I love the way that Cronenberg writes dialogue. I really love it. It's so weird, but it's just
kind of amplified by Jeff Goldblum as well.
Goldblum's
the way that he delivers
weird.
all these lines.
Yeah. And the whole reason that it won't work, it's sort of ambiguous as to what the science of it is, but the reason that it won't work is because the machine is incapable of appreciating the flesh in the way that human beings do. Like, humans have an innate, like, love for flesh, I guess.
Yeah.
Is kind of what they talk about. Like, it's in this intimate scene with Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis, they're like, she says something like, oh, I just want to bite you because, like, I love you so much. And that is what kickstarts him being like, that's what it is. That's the problem. Machines don't want to bite us because they don't appreciate our flesh, I guess. And he figures it out. He does something to the machine. He programs it to appreciate the flesh, I suppose, and then is able to transport this baboon.
Oh, I love
the other baboon.
The baboon looks so cuddly, man.
The baboon, he's so fluffy.
He looks so chill.
I don't know what it is. And then, so Gina Davis at this point, because she's been having a bit of conflict with her boss, the editor of the magazine, who's also her ex-boyfriend and a
Stathis.
bit of an arsehole.
My note, like, earlier, like, he's such a weird guy. He's really
is.
creepy. It was like, yeah, in a movie with a literal man-fly hybrid, that's somehow not the most gross thing in this movie.
Yeah. Stathis
he's just
slimier.
Thoroughly unlikable.
He's the slimiest thing in this film.
Yeah.
Great beard, though.
It's a pretty good beard.
Pretty great beard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually wrote, one of my notes was, I hate Gina Davis' ex-boyfriend, but he has a cracking beard.
Yeah.
So she's having this conflict with her boss. She decides that she needs to leave to, like, confront him once and for all and basically be like, right, fucking knock it off. I'm done. I'm with Seth now. I'm not coming back to you. I'm letting you run my life or whatever. But Seth is a bit freaked out by this. He's been drinking because they were celebrating the fact that they got it to work. He's, like, ranting and raving, and then you think he's talking to himself, and then the camera cuts around and he's talking to the baboon, which I genuinely thought was really funny. Baboons
are, like, notoriously violent as well, are they not? Like,
I think they are pretty violent.
Like, the baboons in this are really tame. Like, they jump up and, like, give him a cuddle and
Gives
everything.
him a hug when he gets out the teleporter.
But, like, I don't know. It's something... There's something unsettling about the fact that the baboon's just, like, sitting there. I definitely wouldn't have picked a baboon for the first animal to try
teleporter. Like, surely, I mean, there's a reason that you call it a guinea pig. It's because you start with a small animal, like a mouse or something. So yeah, I guess it's maybe because they are sort of human-y.
I guess.
Sort of primates. They're trying to evoke that like thing. So then he gets in the pod, not realizing, I guess because he's drunk, he doesn't realize that there is also a fly in the pod with him. And it is enabled, the machine is enabled to transport them as separate creatures, and when it reads all of his DNA in order to reconstitute him in the other pod, it blends the fly and human DNA and kickstarts this devolution, I suppose. Like his body starts to deteriorate gradually, because he's now got fly goop in his blood, I suppose.
Yeah.
There are people who talk about this being an allegory for AIDS and HIV. Apparently, it wasn't intentional. There are people that read it that way. I didn't really get that from watching it. I wasn't really sure.
Really considered it
beyond like that, just the fact that it's in the 80s and it's about sort of this degenerative disease and kind of like the fear that it's contagious, but it's not really. Like, it's sort of...
They don't really touch on that too
They don't
much.
really. I can see where people are getting it from, but I didn't when I was watching it. And I'm fairly sure that Cronenberg has said that, like, that wasn't the point.
Yeah.
So, not sure. But yeah, it doesn't start to deteriorate right away. At first, he's doing somersaults and flips, and he's super strong, and he can just do some proper gymnastic shit in his lab, and
he batters some guy in an arm wrestling
he
competition.
He breaks the guy's arm in an arm wrestling competition. He has like marathon sex sessions with Gina Davis. Yeah, and then it's basically at that point you realize that he's not only physically starting to deteriorate. Well, we don't quite get into it. Like, we see he had a cut on his back because there was like a scratch. You lay on a little microchip or something and it scratches his back, and he's starting to grow these big, long, thick, insecty hairs out of his back. And also his face, you can see his face is getting like sort of pock marks and scars. So there's like a little bit of the physical deterioration at this point, but it's mostly sort of meant, like, you can tell he's gone a bit mad. He's sort of obsessing over how he's changed and he's different now and he's better and it's purified him and he's the next form of humanity. He's like, he's evolved into something better. And he starts trying to convince Gina Davis to go through the machine as well, because he doesn't realize about the fly yet. He thinks that it was just being teleported is what has changed him. So he is trying to convince her to go in and she won't. And then he has this big rant where he starts talking about the flesh, and it really goes into the Cronenberg stuff. I love it.
Talks about the plasma a lot.
The plasma pool. It's like, yeah, actually I copied down the quote. He says, "I'll bet you think you woke me up about the flesh, don't you? But you only know society's straight line about the flesh. You can't penetrate beyond society's sick grey fear of the flesh. Drink deep or taste not the plasma spring." So weird.
Yeah.
But I love it. And like you say, it's like the fact that it's Jeff Goldblum saying it really sort of elevates the weirdness of this dialogue. Yeah, at this point then he goes to the bar, he breaks the guy's arm trying to impress his girlfriend. The guy's girlfriend. Takes her home. They sleep together. He tries to convince her to get in the machine and she won't get in the machine. And he says, "Don't be afraid." And at this point we realize Gina Davis is still there, and she says the very famous line from this film, "Be afraid, be very afraid."
Yeah,
it's great.
It's so funny. Like, I did not know that line was from this film.
Yeah,
like, it's just become so like inherent to horror as a genre. You totally forget where it comes from.
It came from this specifically.
Yeah,
because it's not like "be afraid, be very afraid" because you're going to turn into a gross fly man. Yes, like, it's not really specific about anything. It's just a very vague line.
It's a good line though.
It's a very good line. At this point, Gina Davis leaves because she's convinced that Seth's just gone mad. She's like, "I'm just going to leave you to it." And this is where the physical stuff really starts to, like, the body horror really gets dialed up. His fingernails start falling out, and he starts, like, being all gooey. Some time passes. I want to say they say a month, maybe a couple of weeks or something.
It's a few weeks, probably.
I'm not sure how much time exactly. Seth then calls Gina Davis and is like, I need you to come back. Like, you were right. I need help. She goes in and he's like properly deteriorated. He's all gross. It's like he's needing to use canes to walk. His teeth aren't falling out at this point, but like all of his nails have fallen out.
Yeah, he needs to throw up.
He needs to like, he starts to like, regurgitate. He's like throws up this stuff that liquefies his food so that he can drink it, because that's how flies work.
Yeah,
very gross. And then his ear falls off.
Yeah,
really gross. And shortly after, Gina Davis finds out that she's pregnant with Seth's baby. Mm-hmm. Presumably after. It is after, because there's a sequel where they actually confirm. Yeah, that it was. I
don't know if we want to talk
post.
About the sequel.
I've not seen the sequel.
We can discuss it at the end.
I don't particularly want to.
Yeah.
It's sort of ambiguous as to whether or not she became pregnant before or after he went through the machine, so we don't know if if the baby is going to be part fly.
Yeah.
Although she certainly is scared that it's going to, because she has a nightmare, this really gross nightmare where she gives birth to a giant maggot.
The maggot abortion scene.
And Cronenberg cameo. David Cronenberg plays the doctor.
Oh, is he one of the doctors?
I think he is. He's wearing a mask, so I couldn't quite tell, but he's got his big square glasses.
Okay.
So I was fairly sure it was him. And then this really does sort of kick off the final part of the film, this final act, where Gina Davis then gets kidnapped before she's able to actually go through with the abortion. Seth breaks in and grabs her and takes her back to the lab with the intention of, now that he knows he's going to be able to combine DNA using the machines, he wants to combine the two of them, the two of them plus the baby, into one being, because he's realized that the only way to get back his humanity is if he continues sort of blending himself with more humans to reconstitute that human DNA. Very gross.
Yeah.
And we get this sort of conflict with them, and Stathis shows up with a gun intending to kill Seth because he's a monster.
He's pretty fucked up.
At this point he is a monster. He vomits up this acidic stuff and melts Stathis's hand and his leg and everything. Presumably because he's going to eat him, or just because he's just attacking him.
Yeah, I think it's just to kind of.
I wasn't sure if he was going to try and
get him away, but yeah, it's pretty visceral. Like,
it's very gross. The hand melting,
hand just kind of
really horrible. And then when he's trying to put Gina Davis into the machine, she like breaks his jaw falls off and his face kind of falls apart, and we get the proper like fly head underneath, and his legs start to his flesh starts to break away, and he's like all fly and insect underneath. He's got like insect
black
feet
eyes and the hairs, and
so gross, but it looks great.
Academy Award for Best Makeup.
As it very deserved, because it's really, really good.
Yeah.
The design is so cool and it's so well done. It's taken a while for me to reach the point where I can really appreciate like a sort of gross. It's not, I wouldn't necessarily call it gory, because it's not like a lot of blood, but it's definitely that sort of viscera and slime and ooze and body horror and whatever. It's taken me a while to learn to appreciate that and not just be grossed out by it and not want to watch it. Like, appreciating how well done it is in a film like this is just...
I think especially the scenes where he's actually, where his Brundle's face is like tearing away, like how they would have done that to have all this stuff underneath and it all breaking apart. It's technically, it's very impressive.
Yeah. he then tries to put Gina Davis in the machine. Well, he puts her in, but then Stathis manages to short the he shoots
the cables,
the cable to disconnect it, and Brundle then gets blended. Instead of getting blended with Gina Davis, gets blended with one of the telepods. I'm not sure exactly.
Well,
how
he opens the door.
He opens the door. He cracks it open and tries to get out.
Yeah, he tries to escape, and as he's like leaving the door, the telepod activates.
Yeah.
So it's like the door and half of the telepod plus him get like shot to the third telepod.
Yeah. And he
boy.
comes out, he's very H.R. Geiger. He's all like metal and flesh combined. There's like big chunks of metal and cables inside him and everything. And he is like, at this point, knows his fate. He's done for. He's finished. He gets the gun. Gina Davis is holding the gun, and he like grabs the barrel of the gun and sort of puts it against his own head, just ushering her to kill him. And at first she can't do it, but then she does.
Yeah.
She just blows him away, and he's done.
There's something, that scene makes me really sad. There's
It's
something
very
really
sad.
emotional. Like, it shouldn't be, because it is a giant man-fly thing. This horrible, disgusting creature. But just the way that it, like, slowly pulls the gun towards his forehead, there's something really, like, upsetting about that. I don't know. Just, like, the last of his humanity, understanding how far detached he has become, realizing that that's the way out.
Yeah.
Is to die. It's I don't know. I didn't expect it, but I felt a wee bit teary-eyed watching it. I was like,
definitely. And it's the fact that like Gina Davis obviously loves him so much, and she's the one that has to kill him. And like the whole film's about him losing his humanity. So to know that there's just like that last little bit left is very sad.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Roll credits.
It does. It ends quite abruptly.
It ends pretty abruptly. And it's basically the film, the credits start rolling, and we're getting the names of the actors that are in it. And at this point, I realized there's like 5 named characters in this film. I wasn't thinking about it while watching it, but there's a very small cast. Or I mean, there are a few scenes where you've got like the extras and stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of like named characters or characters with dialogue, it's basically like the 3 main characters of like Seth and Veronica and Stathis. Then the guy in the bar is named. I can't remember what his name was.
Marcus or something.
Yeah, Marcus.
Something like that.
And then also his girlfriend, whose name I also can't remember. But it's like the two of them are named. Beyond that, it's like that's it.
Yeah.
Basically, nobody has any more dialogue or anything.
You've got like the doctors in the nightmare scene. There's the abortion doctor as well.
Yeah.
And that's
it,
pretty much.
And like none of them are named. Yeah.
It's a very contained story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, honestly, to its credit, actually.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because I was kind of shocked how quickly it kicks off. Like, usually you've got a bit of a preamble with these kind of films. But this film literally starts with Seth and Veronica talking, and he takes her back to the lab to show him his experiment that's nearly complete, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like, that kicks off the plot immediately. And then you've got, I don't know how long the film is, about 90 minutes or so.
Yeah, it's not long.
But it's a very tight 90 minutes. Like, there's no guff. Like, it keeps you engaged for the whole film, with this very concisely told story.
Yeah.
Which it was just something I thought was quite impressive, especially with 80s films. There's usually quite a lot of unnecessary bits either at the start or the end, or just, this is very cut and dry. What you see is what you get, and what you get is great.
What you get is great.
Yeah.
I finished watching this film and I was like, oh, I hate that I waited so long to watch this, because I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's a really great film. There is one sequel to it that was made, and it was directed by Chris Wallace, who did the makeup for The Fly, the Academy Award winner, Chris Wallace. It was critically panned, the second film, because it just didn't make much sense. But it's about his and Veronica's kid, who does have like the fly in him, and he's taken off to a lab and whatever. I don't know. I've not seen it. I read up on it briefly.
Yeah. It's Eric Stoltz.
Eric Stoltz plays the adult version. Yeah,
not Marty McFly. Eric Stoltz.
No, Eric Stoltz. But there was actually a planned sequel as well, or Cronenberg had outlined what he would want the sequel to be, and it's not miles away. It was basically that Veronica gives birth to twins, and the idea was that they both have the fly gene in them, and she was going to combine them in the telepods to make a full human, and then it was dealing with the fallout from that, where like everyone believes that she's killed one of her children, when I guess technically she kind of did, but I guess I don't know. It doesn't need it. It doesn't need a sequel.
No, it definitely doesn't.
You know, although there was a fly opera. Did you know there was a fly opera?
No, I didn't.
There's a fly opera.
Wow.
Directed by David Cronenberg, and the music by Howard Shore as well.
Oh, cool. That's wild.
That is so wild. I kind of want to see it, but yeah.
There have been a few sort of musicals based on horror films.
Yeah.
There was an Evil Dead musical. I think that was more of an amateur production, but
musical is kind of like verging on the silly. Yeah. Where it's like, you appreciate how ridiculous it is. You know, we're doing a musical based on a horror film. That's silly. This is like an opera. That's a full-on, like... Yeah. I don't know. I mean, Howard Shore and David Cronenberg...
Yeah. Actually, that's worth mentioning.
The
music is fantastic.
Music is great.
And it's very different from... We mentioned Videodrome, which music also by Howard Shore.
Is it?
But it's very minimalistic and just synthy. It's just synth, and it's really good, but it's not nearly the same style. Whereas the music for The Fly is very orchestral. It's like full.
It is very
kind of traditional film score.
We should say Howard Shore, if anyone who doesn't know, did Lord of the Rings.
Did Lord of the Rings.
Hobbit is probably his most famous.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Like, this was only about 12 years or so before he would have been working on Lord of the Rings. Maybe even less, because I don't know how long it would have been in production. But
I don't know. This was 86?
I was going to say 88. Could have been earlier. Could have been 86.
86.
Okay, there you go.
But yeah, I think I got 12 years or so. Yeah, before, because the Fellowship of the Ring was 2000.
Yeah,
99, 2000.
Early 2000s. So yeah. But you can definitely see like it's not similar, but I think you can definitely see his progression from the really synthy stuff in the early 80s into this more orchestral, bigger, grander style.
There are notes you can hear
evolved over time.
Yeah. Overall, it's just a winning formula.
It really is
with everything there.
It really is. You've got great acting. It's a fantastic script. It's a great premise. It's really well shot and well directed.
Yeah.
It's got great music. It's creepy and gross and scary.
Yeah, like I would say, like there's obviously like the body horror element with The Fly, obviously, and some of the other earlier scenes with like the inside out baboon and whatnot. But a lot of the horror in the film comes from this, like, I don't know. I don't even know what the feeling is, but just this discomfort of like, what would you do if you're in that situation? Yeah. You know, like he didn't know that fly was in the telepod. He's gone through and his life is over and he's just deteriorating.
Yep.
It's just something really just existentially terrifying about that.
I think that's why I can see people drawing similarities to it being about like degenerative diseases or cancer or whatever. This sort of like, it just kind of happens to people outside of their control. Like they're not doing something on purpose to make it happen.
Yeah.
It's just happened and now their body's just giving up on them. So like seeing it as this like metaphor for terminal disease, whether it's intentional or not, it's definitely there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's very scary.
It is terrifying.
Yeah.
Cool. So I take it you enjoyed it then?
I did. I very much enjoyed it. In fact, I give it 5 stars.
You give it full 5 stars?
I give it a full 5 stars.
Cool.
I really love this film. I think for me, the thing that makes a film 5 stars is if I cannot think of a single thing about it that I would change. There is not a single, like, even like minor gripes. If there's a little something, I would maybe give it 4.5 if there was like 1 or 2 little things that I'm like, oh, maybe it would have been better if they had done this, or maybe, oh, you can see the edge of the set there, or like whatever. There's none of that. There's no like even tiny little things. It just, the whole way through, I was just consistently impressed and couldn't find a single thing wrong with it.
That's fair. I gave it 4 out of 5. And that's not, I don't know. Now that you've said that, saying like, yeah, you'd consider it a 5 if you can't think of anything you would change. I don't know that I can strictly think of anything that I would change about the film.
Even if you don't have any particular big gripes, if you're not entirely enjoying it, it's perfectly valid.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I do enjoy it. I think it's a great film, but it's not one that I would immediately jump back and watch again.
Yeah,
like I find it quite a tough watch, and a lot of like the special effects are pretty gruesome and uncomfortable to watch, and just that kind of that feeling, you know, the squeegees, you know.
Yeah, you definitely get some squeegees.
So it's a great film, and I can absolutely appreciate how good it is. But for me personally, I'm kind of like, yeah, I enjoy it. I'd give it like 5-10 years before I watch it again, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it is. It's really great. It's just really great.
Mm-hmm.
What more can I say?
Yeah.
Definitely worth a watch.
Absolutely.
The man himself, Jeff Goldblum.
Oh, he's so great.
Yeah. Very handsome man.
He's a very handsome man.
Yeah. He's pretty jacked as well in this
he
film.
Is. In this,
like,
he's in very good shape. I'm trying to think of like what other thing, because he was in. It always surprises me how long his career has been. But I mean, he was in like Invasion of the Body Snatchers in the late 70s.
Yeah.
And then this, and then like Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
He looks pretty much the same the whole time.
He has aged well as well.
He's aged very well.
Yeah. He's got that silver fox look. You know?
He really does.
Yeah. Good old Jeff Goldblum.
Did you watch the documentary that he did? There's like a documentary series that's just him sort of kicking about.
Yeah, I didn't vibe with it.
No.
I watched the first couple of episodes and it just felt so directionless.
It is.
It's just him like finding out things.
He's just
like
so
modern culture.
weird. But like, yeah, it really works.
What's
Just
the first?
watching-
He goes and looks into the world of like sneaker collections.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
Mhm.
It's like so you pay thousands of dollars for a sneaker. Yes, that's interesting. And it's like he's just so
great.
weird, man.
He's great.
Yeah. Cool. So that is The Fly. Definitely, arguably Cronenberg's best.
Yeah. I mean, it's I would say maybe like peak Cronenberg.
Yeah.
It's a Cronenberg at his Cronenbergiest.
He is definitely the Cronenbergiest in this, yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe not my favorite. I think I've said before that Dead Zone's my favorite Cronenberg.
I do like Dead Zone.
And I would maybe stand by that even after watching
Dead
this.
Zone. It
I
does
do
not
also-
have the same level of body horror.
No.
It doesn't have any level of body horror, really.
Yeah. It's a
But it's just such a good film.
it's a fantastic film.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you
With
saying?
another very weird leading man.
Oh, that's true,
Christopher
yeah.
Walken.
Christopher Walken.
Um
The ice is gonna break!
yeah. And well, in Videodrome as well, you've got James Woods as a leading man. He's a fucking weirdo as well.
Yeah, but he's a bad kind of weirdo.
Is he the bad kind of weirdo?
Oh, yeah.
Is
You not
James
seen
Woods
what
a
he's up
creep?
to these days?
No.
Oh,
is he
he's a
like-
bad
is he
kind of
bad?
weirdo.
Oh, okay. That's a shame.
I think he started off a good kind of weirdo and just lost
yeah.
it. Yeah, Jeff Goldblum's like the innocent, good, weird uncle.
Yeah.
James Woods is like the Texan uncle who you don't invite to barbecues anymore.
Yeah. Who was it? It was Jeff Goldblum and I think it was Danny DeVito. Someone was talking about the two of them are like, they both have like uncle energy. They both have uncle vibes, but Jeff Goldblum is your mum's brother and Danny DeVito's your dad's brother.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I definitely think Jeff Goldblum has uncle energy, but he's your mum's brother.
I don't know what that means, but
You see
but
what
I kind of do.
You feel it.
Yeah.
There's no way to explain it, but you feel it in your gut.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Let's move on. I couldn't think of any fun quizzes to do with evolutionary horror.
No.
I did stop and have a think this week, see if I come up with anything, but it's not really a
It's
theme.
not the best one for it.
Next week, maybe.
Next week
yeah.
could be a good one.
Yeah, I'll maybe have a think. So our second film this week is, Altered States, directed by Ken Russell in 1980. It is an incredibly bizarre film.
Yep.
Not entirely sure what I expected going into it. It's I want to say it edges on the side of like a thriller more than a horror.
Maybe.
I don't know. Like the horror, there are a few horror elements there, but you could bill it as like a sort of sci-fi thriller. I don't know. It is credited as just like a body horror film, but I don't know. I was more weirded out than I was scared by the film.
Yeah.
So we have William Hurt in his big movie debut, which surprised me because I just assumed he was one of the guys who'd kind of been around doing it all his life.
Yeah,
but this was his first movie, and I didn't write down her name, and that's really bad of me. His partner in the film.
Yeah. Not anyone especially well known, unfortunately.
She was in an episode of Frasier.
Was she in an episode of Frasier?
She was in an episode of Frasier. That's how I recognized her.
Oh, there you go.
You can look up the name. Sorry, that's bad of me. Bob Balaban is in it.
I like Bob Balaban.
He's just got a great name. I
bit-
love the name.
he's a bit-
I
he's a
love
bit
saying Bob Balaban. And Drew Barrymore
Drew Barrymore, very young Drew Barrymore.
plays in her big movie debut as well.
Yeah. Was this her first film?
It was. Plays,
Before E.T.?
Yep.
Before Firestarter?
Yep. Plays one of William Hurt's children
There you go.
in the film.
It also has, as I noticed, John Larroquette
Yes.
in a one-line role,
Yes.
tiny little role. It's weird. This is the second time that we've had a film that has featured John Larroquette in a tiny little role. Because he was
Just
also the
popping up here
narration
and there.
for Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
I wonder if he was paid in weed for Altered States as well.
I wouldn't be surprised given how this film
That's
looks.
true. That's very true. It was Blair Brown.
Blair
is
Brown.
the name of the lady
Thank
that plays
you.
his partner.
Sorry,
Emily. She was also in
She's been in quite a few
Orange
things.
is the New Black. Apparently.
Yeah, she played the Martha Stewart knockoff
Right.
in Orange is the New Black. She's got one of those faces that you recognize from something. She's been in quite a lot. But yeah, that's really bad of me. I forgot the name. So, Altered States is about a scientist named Edward Jessup who is obsessed with unlocking the genetic memories of humans going back to when we were primordial goop. He's obsessed with the idea that human brains and human evolution still stores some of that knowledge from when we were, fresh out of the gene pool.
Yeah.
And he's obsessed with like unlocking these memories and analyzing them or whatever. He's billed at the start as kind of a loner, like when him and his colleague introduce him to Blair Brown's character.
Yeah.
He's billed as like, oh yeah, he's a bit strange, he's a bit of a loner. But in the rest of the film, he's like pretty outgoing and chatty and confident. So I don't know, it didn't really line up to me.
It was in the the first scene that he's in. I did make a note that like he's introduced as like, oh, he's so weird. He's not he's really shy and like he doesn't really whatever. But he comes across like incredibly confident and charismatic
for the rest of the film
with Emily.
Yeah.
And then pretty much for the rest of the film.
It's really weird. Sorry, Emily, her name is.
Emily.
Emily, thank you. So, yeah, he starts dating Emily, and we get a bit of a time jump. The first 10 minutes of the film, we're introduced to Edward. He does a lot of sensory deprivation research, so he spends hours in there hallucinating and thinking about weird things, like multi-eyed goats and Jesus and his dying father. It's all very bizarre. There's a lot of weird imagery in the film. I don't really know why it's there, but anyway, he and Emily start dating. They quite quickly get married as well, and then there's a time jump, 7 years apparently. I don't know if that was on screen or if it's just implied, but either way I missed it. So when in one scene they talk about getting married, and then the next scene they're catching up with their friends in San Francisco? And they're like, oh yeah, Edward and Emily are getting divorced. And I'm like, what? What? They're not even married yet.
Yeah.
Did I miss something?
They don't explain it.
Yeah.
But like there's a time jump and then like suddenly they're married and they have kids.
Yeah.
And they're getting divorced.
Completely, like, I don't know what happened, but I completely missed that and was just thrown off. But yeah, so they're getting divorced, they're separated, and Edward wants to continue his research. Emily doesn't like how involved he is in his research, and sort of standard, generic divorce, whatever, for the sake of the plot, I guess. Edward goes off to Mexico, I believe. He goes with one of his colleagues or friends to visit this tribe in Mexico that have allegedly found this hallucinogen. It's kind of similar to the idea of like peyote, but they use specific mushrooms and they use blood as well.
Yeah.
And it supposedly unlocks these hidden memories in your brain, and they have this physical property to them as well. Like they unlock physical memories, supposedly, which is kind of exactly what Edward's looking for, and he becomes really obsessed, and he goes and he has this weird trip in the desert where he gets blasted by sand and decomposes, and there's more weird imagery, and he kills a lizard. He kills one of the sacred monitor lizards in his hallucinated state, so the tribe aren't very happy with him. But they still give him a sample of the stuff.
They
to
just
take
give
back.
him some stuff. They give him a little bit of the goo.
So he takes the goop, back to the lab, and he starts using it more and more. They kind of his other there's two colleagues. One of the guys, Bob Balaban's character, is kind of like chill and just lets him get on with stuff. And then there's his other colleague, Mason
Parrish, apparently,
who's really like, I don't know, he's just so...
He's very intense.
Yeah, intense.
I actually really liked his character.
He was just insane.
He's a bit nutty, but it's also like he seems to be the only one that has any common sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's very much like they're like, I don't know if he's in charge, if he's like the dean of the school and he's the one that's like really keeping track of the research they're doing or whatever. But they kind of come to him and they're like, yeah, this is the plan. We're going to take a bunch of these hallucinogens that we don't know what they are. All I know is they made me trip balls when I was in Mexico. I'm going to get in the sensory deprivation tank.
Just see what happens.
And just see what happens. And he's just like, no, what are you, insane? Are you fucking stupid? I'm calling your wife. Like,
yeah.
And he does. He calls
his
wife being like, hey, you got to come and get your fucking husband. He's going to kill himself.
But it's the fact that they find that like the hallucinogen has like toxic properties as well. Yeah. And Edward's just like, yeah, but if I don't take too much, I'll be fine.
It's like it's gonna give you cancer. Yes. It's currently in the process of giving you cancer.
Just like, no.
Yeah, I really liked him.
Yeah,
I think it was funny.
But Edward obviously continues because he doesn't care what anyone else says. He just like let him cook. He's got something, So he does it a few more times. We see him doing it once, and he comes out with the sensory deprivation tank covered in blood. He's like bleeding from the mouth, and he can't talk. So everyone thinks he's had a seizure, but he believes that he regressed into a previous human, into a previous evolutionary state prior to speech.
Yeah.
And then he couldn't, and that's why he couldn't talk. So they go away, do X-rays and stuff, and they figure out there is something questionable about his X-rays. So this like leads him to believe that there is physical properties, and he starts to like has like bumps on his arms, and sees his feet go all like gorilla-y. He gets like
he's got
the extra toes,
vestigial toes.
And yeah, we're kind of seeing him start to lose it. The next time he does it, he does it by himself. Because I think he like hires a janitor to watch him. Yeah. Because the other colleagues aren't there, and he fully regresses into like a Homo sapien.
Well, he's a Homo sapien.
Well, yeah, like an early Homo erectus.
Homo erectus. Neanderthal or whatever.
Yeah, Neanderthals. Yeah, sorry. he regressed to Homo sapien.
My note. I should point out that I was really drunk when I watched this, because I watched it yesterday. Having done a 5-hour-long cooking class with bottomless wine, so I was
bottomless anything is
steaming.
That's bad news.
And then I continued drinking in the evening while I was watching this film. So the note that I made around this point was monkey man, monkey man, caveman, unga bunga. Because that's him. That's what he turns into, a caveman. Unga bunga, you know?
Unga bunga. Yeah, he does do an unga bunga.
Oh. He also, at this point, he's in bed. He did like when he gets in the shower, and that's when you see he's got like the monkey feet. Yeah. At this, like when he gets up and goes for the shower, and he has there's like the bladder effect on his arms, and he's all gross. He's with a woman. There's like a woman that's in bed with him. Yeah. Who I don't think had been introduced. I don't think we know who
it's implied that it's one of his students.
Yeah, because she calls him Dr. Jessup. And I was like, that's really gross. Yeah. I did not like this character at all. The whole time I was just like, this guy's an arsehole. Oh, I think I called him a cunt in my notes at least 3 times.
He does. He says something in the previous scene. He says something to either Mason or Bob Balaban's character. Yeah. He says like, oh, I've got one of my students from later on in the day, we're going out to get a drink later or something. Yeah. And I was like, I raised an eyebrow and was like,
that's so gross.
Okay. But yeah, so he becomes monkey. He cuts about town. He batters a security guard with a stick or a metal pipe or something. Yeah. Runs about town. He chases some dogs. He runs away from the dogs. He finds some deer. He kills a deer with a stone, lobbing a stone at it from like 50 feet away. Yeah, manages to hit it square in the eyes and then eats it. That's all fun. And then he finally returns to human form, and he gets taken home. And oh, it gets like arrested, I guess. And taken home. And
because if you kill a deer in the middle of like he's in like Boston or something,
it's like it must be a zoo or something.
He's just broken into a zoo and killed a deer with his bare hands and then eaten it because he's on so much fucking peyote.
I know, like it's nuts. And the scene, like, I guess I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to show that okay, he does have these physical regressions. He does like go back in time to become a Neanderthal, whatever. But the whole scene was just so goofy and so weird. It's like, what is going on? What is this film? But yeah, so he returns and he goes back to Emily, and he kind of sees his kids and stuff, and he's trying to convince her that he's on the edge of this breakthrough. Like he's determined to find this, like the first thought. The very first whatever in evolution, and he eventually convinces Emily to go along with it. He wants to do it one last time. He wants to get in the tank and presumably take the hallucinogen again one last time. So they agree to it, and everything's grand until the tank suddenly explodes in a blinding flash of light. It paralyzes Bob Balaban. Mason and Emily get like they leave the room, and then Mason passes out and Emily comes back in, and we get all this weird imagery of Edward like regressing into like a primordial goop.
Yeah, he looks like a big melted marshmallow.
He does look like a big melted marshmallow. This big weird worm man thing. And the actual act of the regression has like a physical effect on the world as well. It's like the room starts to explode, and there's this big whirlpool in the middle of the room as well that Emily starts to get like sucked into, but she manages to bring him back through the power of love, I guess. I don't know. The scene doesn't make a lot of sense.
The whole film doesn't make an awful lot of sense, unfortunately. I think it was at this point I made the note, I'm too drunk for this.
Yeah.
But also that I kind of want to watch this just stoned off my ass. I think like getting really high and watching this with your pals could be fun.
One of my notes was, I don't see how you could watch this high. Because I think you would have a proper panic attack.
You may well do. Like the visuals are... Yeah, weird.
They're a lot. They're cool, but one, they don't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
and two, they are intense.
They are intense.
But yeah, she saves him through the power of love. She pulls him out of the whirlpool, and he eventually turns human again, away from this weird goop thing, and they take him home. And she freaks out. Because why wouldn't she? Her husband or ex-husband just turned into primordial soup, and she has a bit of a panic attack. Mason and Bob, I should learn the other guy's name. Bob Balaban they're like, okay, it's over, it's done now. He'll sleep for a while, and then he'll be back to normal, and it'll all be good. And then the final scene of the movie is Edward waking up and kind of saying like, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. And as he leaves the room, he walks down to the bathroom. The whole thing happens again, and he like starts to regress, and it's all this really super bizarre imagery. It's like what do you call it? Like a not a chroma key, but is it a chroma key effect?
I guess maybe.
Where it's like just he's got all this makeup on, like as an actor, not like with it. He didn't like put on lipstick or anything. He's all made up to be like sort of regressing and goopy and whatever, but they've got this like light effect on him as well. And Emily touches him and she gets affected by it as well somehow.
Yep.
So she's glowing red and white and weird, and he sees her like that, and he's like, no, I must fight my way back to being human again. And he starts like pounding on the walls and changing color, and he eventually makes it to her, and they hug, and they both become human again. And that's the end of the film.
Yep.
It's a trip.
It sure is a trip.
I came out of it, and what was the point of the film?
Yeah, I don't know.
What was the message there?
You know how... Do you ever watch The Twilight Zone?
I've seen a few, yeah.
You know, there is like quite a few episodes of The Twilight Zone that were like metaphors for whatever. There was ones that were like... they had like a message behind them. Like,
yeah.
You know, you should... You know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, whatever, and or like be careful what you wish for, or like don't let superstition control your life, or whatever. But every so often there was one that was just like, hey, what would happen if this fucked up thing happened? Wouldn't that be scary? Wouldn't that be fucked up? And I feel like that's what this film was, is that like it kind of has the pretense of having like meaning and depth, but at the end of the day it's basically just like, hey, wouldn't it be fucked up if your husband turned into a monkey? Like...
It's spot on. Yeah, absolutely. Because the whole, I don't know, his whole I'm trying to compose my thoughts here. I just don't know what to say. Like, there's the whole sort of obsessive scientist trope, right? Is that he's ruined his life following this dream, this idea. But that isn't really leaned on that heavily, mainly because Emily is missing for like the whole middle of the film.
Yeah.
Like, she's introduced at the start, they get divorced within the first 15 minutes of the film, and then she doesn't see him at all until like the final act. So it's not like his obsession with the work is driving his family away. They've already been driven away.
Yeah.
So that's not the message. The whole idea of pursuing something that shouldn't be pursued, like his idea of like finding the first ever thought, there isn't really any conclusion to that, because it's like, well, he found it, but it's not that he shouldn't have found it.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It was interesting what happened. It was pretty fucked up, but it was interesting. So it's I don't know. I just don't know what the message was. I don't know what I'm supposed to think coming out of this film. It was a lot of weird imagery and a pretty substandard plot for an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I in saying that, you know what, I didn't hate it like as a film.
I didn't.
You know, it was
Especially
fine.
dislike it.
The plot was like easy enough to follow, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
On the most part, like what he was doing made sense. There was a lot of like the weird, a lot of the religious imagery towards at the start of the film.
Yeah,
they didn't really follow through on that at all. The whole idea of him kind of becoming a god, sort of. The fact that he could go back to the point where there was no, like, the first ever thought, I guess, was the main thing. I don't know. They didn't follow through on a lot. And the whole stuff with Emily, like, I don't know if we were supposed to care about her or care about their relationship.
I don't know.
Because the fact that she was missing for most of the film, I was just like, okay. Yeah. I don't care. Why should I care about these people? I have no interest. So, yeah. It was a very abstract and bizarre film that I struggled to understand the point of. Yeah. But I didn't despise it. It was fine. Yeah. What did you think?
Yeah. I definitely lost track of it while watching.
Well, you were drinking.
I was drinking quite a lot. But I think like a lot of it was just incredibly trippy visuals that I liked, but it wasn't really enough to carry an entire film. I didn't find much else in the film that I particularly enjoyed.
Yeah, that's fair.
It was mostly just like visually very interesting, but like the characters weren't particularly interesting. The plot was bordering on incomprehensible. Like it was, it was okay.
It was fine.
It was all right.
William Hurt was good. His acting was
pretty good.
As a sort of obsessed scientist, I thought was decent. Yeah. I wouldn't say anyone else was particularly stand out.
No. I did think Blair Brown towards the end was unfortunately feeling a little not great. Yeah. There aren't many other characters that really get a chance to show off much.
Mason's good as the sort of
good. I like
caretaker
him.
style doctor. Yeah, he was okay.
Yeah.
But it's what it is.
Yeah. Overall, I thought that it was quite very, very kind of David Lynch with the sort of strange, just sort of strange, surreal visuals, and like there is a plot, but the plot isn't really the point. Yeah. Which is, I'm sure there are lots of people out there that enjoy that. I don't know, it's not really my style.
It's rated quite highly, critically.
There are probably a lot of people that really, really enjoy this film, and I don't want to detract from that. Like,
You do you?
I just, yeah, absolutely.
How did you rank it?
I gave it 2 stars.
I also gave it 2 stars.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah, we're on the same page here.
Yeah, not bad necessarily. I just, the whole time was like, why am I watching this?
Yeah, it very much leaves you the question of what was the point. Which is a shame for a film that I think it probably could have been tightened up. Yeah, a little bit. But it just doesn't. And yeah, I don't know. The author, not author, the screenwriter of the film has detached him. What's the word? Detached himself from this film.
Yeah.
He and Ken Russell, who directed it, had a falling out during the film, and yeah, he's not very happy with the film. I can't remember the guy's name.
There you go.
But I can see why, kind of. I think there were a lot of decisions made throughout the film that leave me wondering.
Yeah, I can't really imagine what the screenwriting process must be like for a film like this. It was probably written to be a lot more straightforward body horror, and then the surreal visuals took a hold. So I can imagine that would be very frustrating if you've written a film to be like, you know, to have a good concise plot.
Yeah.
And then they were just like, nah, fuck it.
Like, well, that's the thing as well.
We're
like
focusing entirely on the trippy visuals.
Yeah, you know, there's not really anything horror about it unless you consider like the existential threat of becoming a soup. You know, regressing to the point where you have no constitution, you know, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, there was no, it wasn't very scary on the surface. Which is another, I guess, point down for it, because I'm in it to be scared. I want to, if I watch a film like this, I want to see the scares. Yeah. I want to be terrified. And I was not. I was just bored.
You're just bored.
Yep. It is a shame. But it's fine. It's done now. It's watched. We are done with evolutionary horror.
We are.
And I don't think we'll revisit that theme, because
there probably aren't many other films that we can really...
Yeah. The other films that we were thinking of was like Annihilation, and I think that one fits probably in a few different themes.
Yeah.
So we'll probably hit that at some point along the way. But next week, we have the theme of giallo.
Yeah.
You love a giallo.
I like a giallo, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to explain what a giallo is?
You can, feel free, yeah.
So a giallo is an Italian film, or at least there are some films that aren't Italian, but just heavily inspired by the Italian films. It comes from the Italian word for yellow, because that was the color of book covers, these like really kind of pulpy, gritty murder mysteries that had lots of like violence and sex in them around like kind of the 1950s, 1960s-ish. And then it evolved into films as well, with lots of kind of sex and violent murders, but this real kind of murder mystery aspect to them as well. Sort of, we talked about it. Would it have been last week? Yeah, last week.
Yeah, because
we're talking about Bay of Blood is kind of this sort of, you can see giallos as a early version of slashers, and Bay of Blood kind of bridges that. Yeah, giallos.
Giallos,
very interesting.
Fun. What have you picked for us to watch from the giallo backlog?
I am going for a pretty famous one. It's one of the first films that comes to mind for giallo films by a very famous director. I'm going with Deep Red by Dario Argento.
Cool.
Have you seen it before?
I haven't seen Deep Red, no.
I have also not seen Deep Red.
It's sitting on my shelf.
Yes. Good. Perfect.
I do have a copy of it, so that's fine. We'll watch that. I am continuing from our discussion last week on giallo films.
Yep.
And I am going to go with Blood and Black Lace.
Ooh.
Because I have not seen that. I know you have.
I have seen it, yeah.
But I have not. And you said last week how I should watch it. So
here
we go.
Perfect.
What better excuse to watch it?
Because that was Mario Bava who did Bay of Blood.
Yeah.
This is his like early stuff. It's like very, I remember being surprised by how early it was, because it doesn't.
Mid-60s.
It was like 1965, I think, but it doesn't feel like it came out in 1965. It has that real sort of vibrant 70s.
Most of the giallo films are
70s.
Yeah. But there are quite a few that are 60s, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Give that a shot and see what it's like. Hopefully I enjoy it, because I feel like you enjoy it, and if I don't, you'll judge me. But
it's been a little while since I've watched it, so I'm excited to watch it again.
Cool. Excellent.
Yeah.
So we will return next week for giallo we have evolved from evolutionary horror, and we will continue to evolve each week.
Possibly into something that we cannot understand or
comprehend.
appreciate.
Oh, what?
Not
Yeah,
or appreciate or comprehend. Yeah, we're going to evolve into a horror beyond our comprehension. Like a caveman, unga bunga.
We're going to evolve back into caveman.
We're going to evolve. Yeah, that's how it works. Eventually, you become a caveman again. Actually, if we evolve into anything, it'll be a crab. Eventually, have you heard that? Have you not heard that whole thing? Carcination or carcinization or whatever it's called is that, like, evolutionarily speaking, crabs are the perfect life form. So, like, multiple different branches of evolution have just turned out to be crabs. So there's this theory that eventually every living being in the universe, given enough time, will just evolve into crabs.
Can't say I have heard that before.
There you go.
Can't say I particularly liked hearing it now, but
every day's a school day.
Yep, there we go. Okay, well, next week we are crabs.
We're going to be crabs.
Crabs watching Italian horror. Bye, folks.
Bye.